So this is our VIP briefing for the year just past. The last one, I think, was end of 2022. And this particular briefing, I will say, is a special one. We've got some really big news. And because we tell people what we've done rather than what we're going to do, we have actually been quite quiet on the social media front and news front this year. And that's because we've been doing loads. We've been absolutely flat out on a very big project. And that's what I'm going to tell you about today. Before I do get going, I think there's a couple of introductions I do want to make. First is Martin James, who is on the call. Martin is our new, or one of our new honorary vice presidents. So I'm delighted to say that he has accepted the honour of being our honorary vice president. Martin, if you don't know, is a very, very established and respected angler and broadcaster, particularly on his radio shows, and I've sort of grown up respecting him all over the years. So we're absolutely delighted he's here with us and with us tonight. And then secondly, we've got Rafe Gabriel, who's joined our committee as our fundraiser. And Rafe's done a fantastic job this year with an online auction that we did. And I'm deliberately going to take this opportunity personally to thank Rafe, but also to thank all the donors and bidders in that auction, because that raised £1,200 for our little charity, which was phenomenal. That would take a huge amount of individual donations or memberships to reach that amount of money. And without that, we couldn't have achieved what we've achieved this year. So huge thanks to Rafe and a huge welcome to Martin. So this is about our biggest news. You'll see on the right there, it's going to be one of those stories. I'll pause a minute. These VIP briefings are always a bit of a drama, and I do that on purpose because there's highs and lows, particularly with conserving fish. And what I want to show right at the beginning is this is a story with a very happy ending. So you can see on the right there a small handful of the substantial number of wild carp that we have conserved this year, way more than we've achieved to date. And not only have we conserved, saved, rescued, grown babies, we've got adult fish as well. We have brood fish, several hundred of them, in fact. So this is the big news that we will share, and I'm going to tell you the story of how we got there. But just to reiterate, this although we may be very proud of our achievements this year, we're also very humble. And we've mentioned the auction. I'd like to thank all our trustees, volunteers, ambassadors, supporters, donators, members, everybody who is involved in the Wild Carp Trust has made this happen. And notably, the very generous donations that we get and the sales of our Wild Carp Journal that we've achieved this year. So all in all, that's put a few £1,000s in the bank, which has enabled us to do what we're doing, and was much needed at a critical time this summer when we had our opportunity to accelerate what we do. So huge, massive thank you to start. We are a charity. All those funds are invested purely in what we do, which is fundamentally about conservation. It's also about raising awareness and promoting wild carp, both the feral carp we have in the UK, also the bigger picture issue internationally regarding the original species wild carp, which are vulnerable to extinction. So if I remember rightly, back at the end of last year, at our last VIP briefing, we ended with a couple of things. I think, first of all, it was we're about to do our annual journal, and we've got 3 baby carp from the Pancin strain that are conserved in a tanker Pete Whip's property. So it was a huge amount of effort to get us to that. The journal was a phenomenal success, and I would like to thank all the contributors and subscribers. It's gone out to, I can't remember now, 6 or 8 countries. It's gone international, which we're extremely pleased about. And it's been a brilliant calling card for stakeholder relations with landowners, etc., to say this is who we are, this is what we do, take a look at what we've achieved to date. The second issue of that will be coming out this December, and we'll be continuing the story, and we'll be adding additional articles as well. So if anybody wants to write an article, please do so. I've already received some. But really, it was about these fellas, these little wild carp, which after 2 years of hard graft was what we got to show for our efforts. And we're very glad that we had as well. So these are fry that were taken from Pancin at the end of last year, or middle of last year, I believe, following the ultimate failure of our fish rearing thing due to the losses that we had in that hot summer. So we had 3 fish, 3 little babies, which, if you look at, if I go back one, 3 babies that are going to be interesting fish to observe, because Pancin, if you've been on our Facebook group recently, been a bit of a chatter on there. So these fish that you see there are classic Pancin wildies, particularly the ones on the right. It's been known as a wildy water for since, well, the earliest I trace it back to about 1940s, but it was before then. What we've been aware of as a charity is that there have been activities up at the lake that weren't necessarily approved by the landowner. Some people fishing it and treating it as their own fishery, doing works, etc., around the lake. And we are hoping they haven't, excuse my language, buggered up the strain by putting new fish in there. Because what we've observed is there's a distinct difference in the older fish to the younger fish. Fish that are sort of 5 to 8 years old are these very lean, classic looking wildies. The younger fish are a lot stockier. And this is a picture of an example of one caught just a few weeks ago, which you wouldn't say was a wildie. You'd say that's just a standard common. Deep fish, very long barbels. You wouldn't say it was a wildie. However, that is a small fish that was about 8 inches long. And I have been told over the weekend that carp can tend to grow in phases. They can go deep and then they stretch out, and then they go deep again and they stretch out. So the shape of the fish at this point in time is something we're monitoring. But we are genuinely, well, we're really hopeful that some idiot hasn't put other strains of fish in there, because some of these fish, as you can see there, the barbels are very long and the head is much pointier than the classic shape that you would associate with Pancin. So we have, in terms of our Pancin conservation activities, we've got the small fish. We're also going to be going back to look at getting slightly larger fish, ideally some that are of the older strains. So if we can be either putting those into a brood fish program, or stripping eggs, or whatever we can do to get the older fish, that will secure that strain. But we are keeping an eye on what's happening with the strain overall. Carp, being carp, tend to be a result of their environment, and a lot of wildies that we call wildies are just lean fish that are a bit malnourished. In Pancin in the past few years there's been a minnow explosion, and we know that they are very predatory in Pancin. So it could be that these fish are filling out because they've got more protein to go and chomp on. Okay, so that being that, this is where we're at with Pancin. Bit of drama for you. As you remember, the intention for the Pancin strain was to stock them into our conservation pool that we called Cowlip Pool. And this was a water that we've rented for the past 2 or 3 years. Absolutely beautiful. It's like a mini Redmire. It's like an aquarium, gin clear, weed everywhere, lovely lush growth. It had been a trout fishery and we thought this is going to be absolutely fantastic for us as a charity to put our first strain of conserved wildies. All was going great until our neighbours who share the wood at the back there, which is a shooting syndicate, approached us to say, do you mind if we put a few ducks down? Just be nice to shoot those, bit of novelty in amongst all the pheasants that we shoot. And us being us, wishing to keep good neighbourly relations, said, yeah, that's fine, that's okay, carry on. To our horror, this is what we turned up to. And so Cowslip's half an acre, and they put 700 ducks down. 700 ducks, which in the course of just a few weeks turned what had been beautiful lush grass and gin clear water into this, which was barren, banks, erosion, very, very muddy. But most importantly, the water had become stripped of weed, muddy, and absolutely full of duck poo. And so the bankside stuff, it's an aesthetic. It's not pleasant to walk on or be around, but the water quality was our bigger concern. So on that little test strip there, you'll see the second row down is the ammonia nitrate level, and anything over, I think it's about 10% is bad. That's at 500 to 1,000 parts. So that's toxic. And we were completely horrified. We had chats with the neighbouring shoot, we had chats with the landowner. The outcome was we as a charity decided that it was not good use of charitable funds to rent a polluted lake. And so we gave up our lease on Cowslip. Still got very good relations with the landowner, and we've said if at any point in the future the ducks aren't put down and the water quality returns, then it could potentially still be a viable conservation pool. But in talking to the Angling Trust and some of their fisheries guys, they've said expect it to be 4 years or more before the pollution that comes out of that much duck poo is washed away. So Cowslip isn't leased by the Wild Carp Trust anymore, but we have relationships with the landowners and may well continue to lease. Well, maybe I'll resume leasing it in the future. But the extremely good news is that we, at about the same time as we were having the challenges with Cowslip, we were very fortunate in being approached by some, I'm not going to embarrass them on the call, but some extremely good friends of ours through Pete Whip, one of our trustees, who have a small pool on their farm. And this pool, load of irises there, so thought we'd name it Iris Pool, is a small, again, very clear lake, full of weed. We're going to be working on it to clear some of that reed out and open up the pool a bit more. But this will be our home for the Pancin fish. Okay, this is what will be conservation pool number 2 for the Wild Carp Trust, but conservation pool for the Pancin strain. And it's a gorgeous little pond. It's absolutely lovely. It's a perfect size for small fish. I think they'll thrive in there. It's got very good depths. But significantly as well is adjacent to the pool is an area of land which the owners have very kindly said that we could, if we wish, use to build additional pools or raising stock ponds or whatever. And they are very, very keen to do their bit for the conservation of these very rare fish. And we're honoured that, one, they're on the call tonight, but two, that we have this facility here. And this is a project that Pete Whip is leading. I think he's been in touch with Dave Vincent as well, who's on the call, to see what we could potentially do with this land, which has quite a good flow of water or access to water to it as well. So we're hopeful, one, of space to build ponds, but two, of good quality water inflow, which is good for the fish. So very, very good news there. And now we're going to start. If you've got a glass of something good, please raise it. Now we're going to start the story, which leads into our big achievements this year. So when the Wild Carp Trust, or rather the idea for a Wild Carp Trust, was had back in 2013, it was in association with a lake. There was a number of lakes really, but principally it was a lake called Linguin, which is near Raiden at the base of the Elan Valley reservoirs. It's a trout fishery, and it's got one of the oldest strains of carp that I know, reputed to have been stocked by the monks. If we align with our carp history, that was probably in the early 1400s. If you align with local folklore, it's earlier than that. But the monks were there until about 1530, so it could be any of those times. But a very old strain of wildie, probably the best looking wildies that I know, and one of the prettiest lakes for wildies that I know as well. So although it's a trout fishery, there is a very good population of wildies in there, and they're probably the best looking wildies I know, actually. The fish on the left there is the fish that I put on my book cover, my Wild Carp book cover. Absolute beaut, absolute cracker. Or one of my covers, I should say. And then the fish on the right is one that Stu caught a while back, which is obviously an old fish, but very, very lean, very, very beautiful. And what happened in the past 10 years is that we've been having some very, very patient and delicate conversations with the Raiden and Elan Valley Angling Association about whether we could secure some of these fish. And to be honest, they've been really, really good and sensible regarding those discussions, because when we approached them, we asked, could we have maybe a dozen fish, put them into a breeding program? They could be our brood fish. And oh, by the way, we've got to go and catch another 30 and kill them because we've got to do health checks, which at the time just wasn't acceptable to them or us. So those conversations sort of bubbled along nicely, but they didn't really get anywhere other than building relationships with a key stakeholder in that fishing association. And then out the blue, in about August time, I think it may have been, maybe in a little bit earlier, we were contacted by Raiden and Elan Valley to say we could do with your help. You're a conservation charity. You're here to protect carp. Yes, we are. Well, our lake has a slight issue on it, in so much as there's been a sudden algal bloom. We believe, we don't know, but we believe due to agricultural pollution, some sort of runoffs. There's been a massive nitrate spike in the lake. There's been blue-green algae, loads of blanket weed, and a result of, we think, the deoxygenation of that, off the back of the decomposition of that algae, the fly life, invertebrate life within the lake has started to tumble. And we need your help. It's a complex issue. There's potentially multiple root causes, things to do, things to fix. One of the issues that the NRW, the Natural Resources Wales, advised on was that the ammonia was locked in the silt at the base of the. There's two key areas in the lake. One is the bay that you can see there. There's another bay at the other end, full of silt, and the ammonia is locked in there. And one of the things that's disturbing the silt are the carp. Obviously, they come in, they feed on bloodworm, they're chuffing around, and they're disturbing some of that ammonia. And so they asked, could you help us in our management of the fishery to remove some carp, to reduce that ammonia release? And on an ongoing basis, can you help us to manage the fishery via the management of the carp? And so once we'd picked ourselves up off the floor with the gobsmacking good fortune, we had 2 weeks in which to go about getting the equipment, the time, the people, everything that would be needed to get these fish and move these fish and conclude negotiations on another conservation pool. So we've got somewhere to put them. So we had 2 weeks in which to fix this and sort this out, because it was just opportunity of our lifetime, literally. During which time we had all sorts of challenges. So what we were asked is, you've got permission to rod and line some fish out. So first of all, you think, okay, who are the best anglers I know within our members who can help go and catch a load of fish? Have we got the kit to do it? If not, where can we get it from? And that was everything from transport tanks, trailers, nets, oxygenation kits, everything. The transport tank, which you can see there, which I thought was going to be a dead easy, just put it on a trailer and we'll move some fish, was a total disaster, because it's rotted, it's fiberglass, the base was falling out, and as soon as we put any water pressure on it, the water just gushed out. So that kept me busy for a couple of weeks. So the transport tank lived in my garage, and I lived in the transport tank trying to fix it. Eventually gave it up as a bad job and ended up just buying an old second-hand pond liner, sticking that inside, and that held the water. So at least we had a way of moving it. We were also able to go and get battery-powered oxygenator kit. Runs off a car battery, and that was all great. The anglers, as you can see, who were very successful there. So amongst our groups, by far the best anglers I know are Sean Harrison, Carp Angling Hall of Fame guy, great friend of mine, phenomenal catcher of carp. It's a gentleman on the right. And Graham Maybe, England international carp angler, World Cup champion winner. Again, phenomenal catcher of carp, but a thoroughly good egg. And both of those guys, from a straightforward phone call to me to say, I need your help, could you free up your diary with like next to no time, could you come and help me catch as many carp as we can? Both of them said yes, absolutely no problem, cancelled everything and drove hundreds of miles to be there when we needed them. So massive thank you to Graham and Sean. And by God, they were phenomenally successful. I should also say, so was Stu Harris, who was actually, let's rewind that. Let's say my top 3 anglers also include Stu, because he's a hell of a catcher of fish. But they caught loads. Graham, bless him, we arranged to be there. He turned up about 8:30 at night. It was getting dark, and he said, "Guys, where do you want me? I'll get cracking." And by 4 o'clock in the morning, standing in the water, feeling for bites because they were coming so fast, I think he'd caught about 50 carp. He'd filled a keep net. Stu, being a stalking genius that he is, had been there earlier in the day and had just caught about 20 fish, I think, off the top. Just a phenomenal catcher of carp. And here's some of those fish. So these are the first batch of adult wild carp secured by the Wild Carp Trust to go into a conservation pool, and from which we hope to spawn additional offspring that will go to be available for other fisheries, other waters, other conservation pools, etc., over the coming years. And they're beautiful. We were also lucky in securing some fry. So as we tend to do, in addition to rod and lining, we put the crayfish traps out with a bit of bread and see what comes along. And we got several hundred of these little beauties, which are the ones on the left. Rewind. Fish collection, done. Fish collection very successful. In that first batch, we got 60, 70 adults, about 100 youngsters. And that's great. But what do you then do with them? We'd spent the 2 weeks getting all the necessary, CFAS, Environment Agency, NRW, all the paperwork, everything in place. The one thing that was delayed, although we were sure there was no problem with it, was the site permit to stock our new conservation pool. And that was pending from the Environment Agency. They said there's no problem, it's not on a streamline, not on a floodplain. Actually, you don't need a health check, which was part of the thing that enabled this to happen. But we need to get the paperwork in place, we need to do it by the book. And it's going to be perhaps 10 to 20 working days before we can get that to you. So, right, okay, so we've got 100 little ones, about 60, 70 adults. What do you do with them? Other than thinking, okay, what can Nigel do with the space he's got and a very forgiving family? And bless them, my daughter offered us her paddling pool. She's got a 12-foot wide by 4-foot deep paddling pool, and she said, "Daddy, you can use that." And my wife said, "When we've got a bit more room, go and buy another smaller pool for the little ones as well." And that's what we did. We had a 12-foot pool for the big ones, and that's me stocking the very first one into the Amelia's little paddling pool. And then we had, they were really happy in their home as the water filled up. And then the little ones, we did two things. We had a pool, we got a paddling pool outside, and also an aquarium. And so for the first night, while we were waiting to set up and the water temperature and whatnot to align on the pool, we got the little carp into an aquarium, which is in my study behind me now. And that's the bag of the first fish going into that aquarium. And that was them on their first night. And before you panic and say how many fish were in there, by God, there's only about 10 in there now. The rest that we moved on. But it was fantastic to be able to see these fish, which are only 1 to 2 inches long, see them behave, see them feed, see the difference in shape. Obviously, some larger shooter ones, which are deeper, some more delicate feeders, even now, actually, in the tank now. Some are delicate and they feed at the base and around that log, and they're quite small. And the bigger aggressive ones are up on the top eating the flake that I'm feeding them. So that was the little ones. They then went into, with some of the bigger brethren, into this secondary pond that I bought. And they were there for, how long now? 10 days, I think. 10 days. And it was very much keep them alive. Not wishing to be a perfect fish farmer, to just keep them alive. And we bought we bought pumps, aerators, feed, oxygenators, all this sort of stuff. And the two learnings that I had, I think, were, I think all of us were in doing this. One is an appreciation of water quality. As anglers, you often hear conservationists talk about pollution and water quality and all this stuff, but it is everything. It's absolutely everything. And the thing that everybody's been telling me since I've been telling the story is you manage the water and the fish will look after themselves. So ammonia pollution, these fish, they poo like crazy. You've got to filter it out. You've got to get it out. It's a constant challenge just to keep the water quality right. And the second learning was when moving carp, they do have that serrated dorsal fin and anal fin, and nets are horrendous on them. Fishing nets, they don't have snag up. So we're looking at alternatives, latex covered nets and other fish transport means, just to carry them without them snagging. But this was the second one. We then had the permission from the Environment Agency. The site permit came through, so it was back on with moving the fish. So we drained the paddling pools off, netted them out. I actually netted them with a carp sack because I didn't want to snag any fins. And my wife filmed, and I'd love to share the film, but she was laughing so much at seeing me trying to catch and net these fish. It was comedy through and through. So trailer out, tank out, fish ready to go. And this is where I can introduce you to our second new conservation pool, which we're calling Edward's Pool. And this is the new home for these fish. This is where they went. And they are the new proud owner of a farmer and his wife who've spent the last few years very lovingly restoring this pool. It had been a pool on a country estate. The house fell into ruin and collapsed. The remnants of the lakes were there, and Edward has taken it upon himself to dredge, repuddle, refill, mature these pools. And he had approached us asking for an appropriate species of fish that may have been in that water in the 1700s. and obviously Wildest could well have been there. And so he was absolutely delighted to be part of this project. And that's Edward in the middle, with his wife Eleanor and daughter, and a couple of other guys there, Martin and Andy, who were able to negotiate the logistics of putting these fish in there. And that's me turning up, I think. And then this is the first fish that went in. It was one of those moments where you think, we've set a charity up to do something, and what we're doing here is exactly why we're here. It's exactly why we exist. Everything that we are doing and this wonderful landowner is doing is congruent with the mission of the charity. So in they went, and we did two deliveries. The latest one was on Friday last week, and Andy had the great pleasure in putting those fish into the lake, which included some beautiful fish, really, some good sized fish. I think hence Andy's smile. But it was lovely to see the whole charity, all our trustees, all our committee, everything all pulling together to make this happen. So that was Andy. And that, I think, is the end of the briefing. I'd like to say, as I did at the beginning, a huge thank you to everybody who's made that happen, because where we are now as a charity is probably 7 years on from where we thought we'd be at the start of the year. It's accelerated us to a point where we have adult brood fish that we previously thought we'd have to grow from eggs, and it might take years to get there. We've conserved 2 strains. There's other stuff going on at Pancin that I haven't mentioned, but we're confident of that conservation. And we're having early inroads into discussions regarding other waters on other strains as well. So to have 2 strains in the bag, so to speak, a conservation pool, a very optimistic prospect of getting more fish, possibly from Linguin, and rearing fish for the availability of other waters is a great place to be to go into next year. And all that done in addition to the promotion work, the encouragement work, everything else, but to actually do what we say we do on the tin and actually conserve fish is huge. So massive thank you to everyone.